Serious airport emergencies are mercifully rare. Most of the emergency calls, or shouts as they're known, here at London's Gatwick Airport are relatively minor. Some will be false alarms. But when hundreds of lives can be at risk in a burning aircraft, the firefighters cannot afford to take any chances. The airport regulations are brutally clear. These men and their machines must be able to reach any part of the airfield within 2 minutes. Gatwick is the busiest single runway airport in the world, handling over 200,000 takeoffs and landings every year. It's the size of a small town. Over 22,000 people work here, employed by 200 different companies. The two terminals teem with life. 23 million passengers pass through these departure lounges every year. Some are on holiday, others on business, but all are justifiably confident that their journey will be safe and uneventful. Occasionally, however, disaster does strike. In 1985, a plane caught fire on the runway at Manchester, and within minutes, nearly half of the occupants had died. That 83 passengers survived was a testament to all involved, especially the professional airport fireman.
The professional airport fireman is somebody that is dedicated to the team. He has to be fit, he has to be conscientious, he has to be patient, he has to have a certain amount of daring do, as they used to say about them, somebody that is going to be prepared to be on the edge.
A tall order, but one which trainee fireman Eddie Wharton believes he can fill. Today is his last day of training, and unless a major incident occurs on the airfield, this is the day he will face his final trial, a full-scale accident simulation known as the heat and humidity test, the ultimate trial by fire. The day begins with a status report and briefing from Sub-Officer Graham Salmon.
Just a quick briefing, just to let you know what's going on, particularly this afternoon. I've got a bit of a busy day today. After the normal run-of-the-mill things this morning, this afternoon, three main things going on. Eddie, your continuation training down in 5 round series of exercises. What they will be, that's a secret, usual routine, okay? We will brief you prior to it, what the basics are. Also, Mark and Simon, here at Gatwick we have a total of 82 staff at the Airport Fire Service, and that is from the governor down. That's then split up into 4 watches, 19 people on each watch, 2 officers and leading fireman. Any questions? All right. We do have a legal obligation to maintain the licence of this airport, and one of those things we have to fulfil is what we call a response time. That response time is laid down by the CAA, and basically it states that the Airport Fire Service must be able to reach either end of the runway or anywhere on the manoeuvring area where aircraft are likely to taxi before or after takeoff. And we've got to reach any of those areas in 2 minutes and not more than 3. And during that 2 minutes, not more than 3, produce 50% of our phone capabilities. If we do that, we're okay. The reason behind that is because aircraft burn very quickly once it caps hold, and we must try and maintain a safe environment for the passengers.
To meet the licensing authority requirements and thereby keep the airport in business, the fire service are equipped with a range of high-powered crash tenders. Top of the range is this, the 710 brake horsepower Cronenberg Mach 11. Like all the other equipment in the firefighter's armoury, the Mac 11 must be thoroughly checked by each new watch when they report for duty, to ensure that nothing is missing and that everything is where it should be. In an emergency, there won't be time to search for a misplaced metal cutter or the hose extension links. The underbody sprays, which deal with runway or grass fires, must also be checked, as must the main pump on the roof of the tender, which has to be able to project 4,500 litres of foam or water per minute over a distance of 80 metres. Satisfied that Old Faithful is still gushing, the next check is the cab interior. The driver sits in the centre of the cab, and each fireman has his own special seat. Their equipment is already loaded into position, so that they can dress on their way to any incident. The giant 8-cylinder turbocharged diesel engine must also be kept in tip-top condition. Not only does it drive the 33-ton Mac 11, but it also powers the foam and water pumps. Fire 2, as it's known, is a somewhat less grand machine. It's the workhorse of the unit, and it's packed with almost every conceivable tool and gadget, from axes to airbags. Back at the station, Eddie is checking his own equipment. His overalls are made from flame and heat-resistant Nomex, just like those of a Formula One racing driver. Later today, Eddie will be relying on this equipment to keep him alive as he steps into the 250-degree inferno of the heat and humidity test. The flash hood will protect his ears and neck from blistering in the intense heat, and the thick protective jacket will keep him cool. More firemen die from heat stroke than from burns. It's essential that Eddie's gear reflects the heat away from his skin. The breathing apparatus that Eddie will use will enable him to stay in the smoke-filled fuselage for 20 or 30 minutes. It's an environment which would kill an unprotected casualty in as many seconds. The air cylinder is made of carbon fibre, light but strong, and it contains 1,800 litres of compressed air, enough for 5,000 breaths, which should be sufficient for most firefighting situations, unless the fireman is injured and declared missing. That can't happen in this afternoon's carefully controlled test, but the procedures need to reflect reality, so Eddie isn't taking any chances as he checks the fit of his face mask and hood. Even in the qualifying test he is about to face, any exposed skin will be burnt. The first shout of the day comes when ground crew checking a departing jet have noticed aviation fuel on the tarmac. Surprisingly, jet fuel is very difficult to ignite when it's sitting as a puddle on the ground, but with passengers and other aircraft nearby, there is no room for complacency. This fuel spill must be dealt with quickly and efficiently. The hoses are deployed and the offending fuel washed down into Gatwick Airport's specially sealed drainage system, so that there can be no consequent environmental damage from the spill. It's an apparently mundane and boring task for the Gatwick firefighters, but it's one which they take seriously. It's part of the job, part of what they all join to do.
I joined the Fleet Air Arm as an aircraft handler back in 1966, a couple of years ago. I think that makes me about 32. And I had 10 years in the Fleet Air Arm, left in '76, fireman all the time in the Fleet Air Arm. So I've got a great passion for firefighting and aircraft. And so I wanted to join the Airport Fire Service. I couldn't get a job for 3 years, and eventually I joined here at Gatwick in 1979. We didn't have this fire station there, it was down the old fire station, so years ago now. So I've been here since 1979, and I'm perfectly happy.
Before I joined the fire service, I was on actually security at the same BAA company. I did that for 6.5 years. But basically, I've always wanted to better myself, and the fire service is something I wanted to do for quite a few years. I mean, I want to like save lives and save property and protect property and whatever. And obviously, that's the progression I thought would serve me.
I used to work in a shop before I came here. Well, I transferred from the shop into like one of our biggest grocery chains stores. It was like a factory and everything like it. I was there for a couple of years and I just couldn't settle. And I had it with the shop and I applied for it and just fortunately didn't. I never looked back.
The next shout of the day is one of those oddities that the fire service have to deal with. The transatlantic jumbo pilot has radioed ahead to inform the airport authorities that one of his passengers needs to be stretchered off the aircraft. The passenger has recently had an extensive skin graft and cannot walk or use a wheelchair. The solution to the problem involves commandeering a nearby service truck with a tail hoist. Not the normal way of leaving an aircraft, but the most comfortable for this unfortunate passenger. The fire crew stand by because they're all medically trained and can assist the paramedical teams who've been called to the incident. Back at the station, Billy Simpson, known to the others as Bart, is holding the fort and making the tea. On any shout, some of the teams stay behind to cover other possible incidents. In the fire station tower, the watch officer is monitoring every radio channel, alert to any possible problem. For the moment, the problem is thirst.
Quiet?
No.
From here, the watch officer is aware of everything that is going on in the airport and is in constant contact with the local emergency services in Crawley and beyond.
Journey runway 26 left.
From takeoffs and landings to sick passengers in the washrooms and punch-ups in the bar, he knows what's happening, or usually does. For no apparent reason, 63 alarms have simultaneously been triggered in the South Terminal. If the shout is real, they'll be dealing with a major conflagration in which many lives could be lost. If it's another false alarm, then the bells must be switched off as quickly as possible, so as not to mask a possibly real incident, or frighten the departing passengers or the welcoming friends and relatives. Having checked that there is no fire in the terminal, and that the massive task of evacuating over 2,000 passengers is unnecessary, the fire officers call the computer experts who will deal with the fault.
According to the main panel, you've got all zones, ground floor, and the Honeywell system in alarm. Roger.
They're everywhere, mate.
Yeah, we've got the whole of the ground floor shown in alarm, so it's obviously. Alright.
Go and charge your two. We're at the main fire panel. Appears to be an alarm fault. We have 63 individual alarms going over.
Yeah, you could be right in.
The system engineers arrive, perplexed by the apparently impossible display of alarms. The Gatwick fire alarm system is extremely sophisticated and, like power stations and some hospitals, employs an active alarm monitoring system. This means that the computers are constantly checking each of the thousands of fire sensors throughout the terminal complex. If a sensor does not respond, then the computer assumes it has been incapacitated by fire and sets off the alarms. Fortunately, on this occasion, the cause was less sinister. Someone put a pickaxe through one of the sensor power lines.
The chance it's going to go again.